it's my pleasure to introduce our first speaker today, Ann Lopez. I've gotten to know her as she likes to shop in our charity thrift store and has donated some incredible items to us. She's a very special person and a fantastic supporter of RSN. She donated her kidney to George Lopez over 20 years ago, and we're so proud to feature her in our magazine. Not only is she a talented director, producer, and writer, but she's also one of the funniest people I've ever met, and it must run in the family because her daughter Mayan is also a hoot. But beyond her talent and laughter, she's an incredible humanitarian who has made such a positive impact on the lives of others. We're so lucky to have her here with us today to share her inspiring experience as a living donor. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Ann Lopez.
Good morning, everybody. Well, you know, it's funny because everything's in the magazine, so I'll just guess I'll just say it all again. My journey being a living donor started with my ex-husband, George Lopez. He popped his Achilles tendon, and it wouldn't heal. So they started to do some blood work and blood therapy to make the wound close. And in that, those tests, they saw that his creatinine level was elevated. He never, as we all know, silent but deadly, you know, he never knew that he had any kidney problems. There were signs early on, he says, like he wet the bed, but his grandmother didn't do anything about it. In high school, he had, when he did his physical for baseball, he had hypertension. They didn't do anything about it. So I know, gosh. So there were early signs that were ignored. So when they did that, they sent us to a doctor, and it was so funny. We go to Cedars. He was like this big. I don't remember his name. His hair was like, he looked like Snoopy. His hair was like a helmet. And he puts up these x-rays, and they go, Mr. Lopez, you're sick. You're very, very sick. You're gonna need a transplant by the time you're 45. He didn't even say hello. We were both like, oh my gosh. And I just looked at him, I go, I'll give you mine. I mean, it just kind of came out automatically, and he just looked at me like, oh, come on, you know, whatever, right? But as it got more and more serious, they did a lot of other tests, and they just tried to, he was definitely gonna need a kidney transplant. But for 6 years, they tried to put it off as much as they can by putting stents, and just, you know, he lost weight, putting stents in, medication. By that time, he was doing the George Lopez show. His kidney level kept getting, you know, lower and lower and lower. I still, to this day, don't know how he did that show on his kidney function, because when I gave my transplant, I was at 50% and I was exhausted. You know, at the end, he was at 17%. So my journey began getting tested, and George and I were under aliases at Cedars, and I was Ann Ace, and he was Tom Ace, because my daughter's favorite movie was Ace Ventura. So all my testing was done really in secret, which was very scary, because every time I went to the hospital, I was like, okay, somebody I know gonna see me, and I mean, I'm not recognizable, but you know, like my ex-husband is, but I was always like, is somebody gonna see me? Is somebody gonna ask what I'm doing here, you know? So it was very cloak and dagger, and finally, we got to a point where they found out it was so funny too, because the doctors I was just so sure, which I'm sure everybody is, every live donor is, but I was really sure that I was gonna be the donor, and so I kept talking as if I already was. Like I would tell the doctors, so when I give my kidney, and they were like, whoa, 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 whoa. You don't know the odds are millions to one, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, whatever. I had all my own doctors, which I had to be in good health to give. I was a little overweight at the time, so I got a trainer and started training. And it was so funny because my trainer, she said, so what are you training for? I was just like, oh, nothing. But, so I was really getting in shape and everything. I was like, you know, I'm gonna give this kidney. What else? Let's see. Okay, so when they finally, you know, I passed one test, I passed two tests, I passed three tests, and the doctors started getting like, oh, wow, you're really doing this. Because obviously we're not related. Dr. Jordan has done a lot of things now a lot of testing and some drugs now that husbands and wives can give kidneys to each other. But at that time, those drugs were not available. So it really was kind of a miracle. So they kind of gave me the okay. But one of the things, you do have to go through psychological testing. And I will say, they brought up things that I had not thought of. Like they said, what happens if you donate your kidney and he rejects it? And I was just like, what? I hadn't thought of that. And I sat there and I thought, well, it'd be sad, but at least I gave it the old college try, I mean, what can I say? And then they said, what happens if you get divorced, if you gave the kidney? And I thought again, and I said, well, it would be very sad, but my daughter would have her father, and it was really interesting because after the divorce, there was a lot of miscommunication in what actually happened. Look, George cheated on me throughout our whole marriage. It was nothing new. I just didn't know about it. I just finally found out. But it became this thing, cheats on the woman who gave, and then I actually divorced him. He didn't divorce me, but somehow one reporter put it out there that he divorced me, and it just snowballed into this, George Lopez divorces the woman who gave him a kidney. And it just took on a life of its own, and we really couldn't stop it. But that is not the truth. I divorced George. And when people would say things to me, very unkind things, like, get your kidney back, and, which is, oh, it's funny, ha, 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 but, not to me, that's not funny to me. I know they were trying to make a joke. I basically just would look back at them and say, you know what, the best thing about organ donation is that you're giving someone back their father, their mother, their cousin, their sister, their brother, and that they'd all go, oh, and I was like, oh, that shut them up. But I come from a medical family. Both my parents were physicians. My mother was an anesthesiologist. My father was in a lot of things. Gosh, he started out as a gynecologist, obstetrician. Then he went back to school and got his degree in aviation and industrial medicine. He was a doctor for Procter & Gamble, and then he was a doctor for the astronauts during the NASA shoots. And so I lived in Cocoa Beach, Florida, and astronauts were coming in and out of our house and stuff. So I'm very comfortable around hospitals. So the operation never really scared me at all, I told my mother, and my mother was very against it because she had once seen or been the anesthesiologist for an organ retrieval where she said it was a beautiful young girl, and when they harvested her organs, I guess she had herpes and they couldn't use any of the organs, and my mother just always had that in her mind. I was like, no, Mom, this is something, when after it was done, she realized it. But for me, my recovery was pretty darn easy. This is funny when I tell people, because I kind of counsel people who are going to be live donors, and when I tell, the women always understand more than the men, because I tell them it was easier than childbirth. They get it. The men, not so much. But it was easier than childbirth. I mean, the first 3 days were, the worst thing was the gas pain, because they do fill you up with CO to get the organ, and all that air is going different places. Of course, my daughter was like, Mom, can't you just, fart or burp it out? And I was like, no, doesn't work that way. It just has to dissipate. So that was really bad. Like all of a sudden I felt like I had a, stab over here and a stab over there and a stab over here. But that was kind of it. And then I went home and watched a lot of reruns of Alias and Pride and Prejudice and stuff like that. But I felt really tired, probably more tired than I had in pretty much my whole life. And that's why I couldn't believe that, and that was at 50%, I couldn't believe that George is such a strong, strong man. I mean, I literally could not believe that he was leading a show at 18% kidney function. In fact, he was getting, towards the end, he was getting, every month he would go to a doctor, and it was February. No, it was February. We were waiting till the end of the season to do the operation in April, and the doctor said, you just went down another point. If you go down again next month, we have to take you in right away. So I went to, without his knowledge, I went to the one of the creators and the executive producer of the show, Bruce Helford, and I had a meeting with him, and I said, listen, this is what's going on. Can you at least take George out of, just make it a little easier for him? And they took him out of one scene every show, because he was the show. So, and I think that alerted a couple of people. I think the writers, my friend who was a writer, she said, oh my God, that got us really nervous. But anyways, I recovered completely perfectly. George was playing golf 10 days later. Crazy. I remember getting wheeled into his room the next day, and oh my God, I hadn't seen his eyes so white, because his eyes had been yellow. His eyes were white, 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 white. And he said that food tasted so, he goes, oh my God, this is what food tastes like. He had lost the taste of food for so long. And another thing was our daughter. We were both going, my daughter was 9 years old at the time. We were both going under the knife, and we were, how do you tell her? We had a very bittersweet vacation for spring break where she was so happy and she was running around. George couldn't even leave the room, and we knew that when we got back, we were gonna have to tell her, because it was about a week before the operation. So what I did was I made a little cartoon book, stick figure, and I had the stick figure, the doctor throwing the kidney from one operating room to the other, and we made it very funny for her. And so she was really never scared about it, because, she was 9, she really didn't understand it, because we weren't scared, and we presented it in such a, humorous, uplifting way that she did not get scared. And I told her teachers at school and all that, but it was funny because at the time, there's a lot of people in Hollywood who have organ donations and they say nothing. They say nothing. But George really, really, really wanted to shine a light on organ donation. That was really one of his really main things he wanted to do. And so I'm recovering, and this was the time, LA Times and the New York Times, and we're on Larry King and on this one and on that one, and so there was a lot of interviews and stuff like that. I think one of the funniest things was the first person, I had called a bunch of people the night before, friends of ours, so that they wouldn't hear it. The night before we said the news. In fact, the tabloids had found out on Sunday, and they said, well, we're going to release it on Monday. Well, and we were already going to release it on Monday, so we were like, ha ha ha. In fact, one of the people taking care of George, coming in to get his blood or something, goes, Tom Ace, but you're George Lopez, right? So it's so hard when you're recognizable, because even though you're under an alias, you've got to, they know your face. So we were really trying to keep it secret, but I had called a bunch of people, and Clint Eastwood was a good friend of ours, because we spent a lot of time up in the Carmel Valley, and he called George and goes, I didn't know you married your sister. And Damon Wayans, who was, he was a neighbor, and he sent us a barrel of kidney beans. So people did funny things like that, and it was great. But I have been so fortunate. George is in really good health. I'm in really good health. I found out I was insulin resistant, and my doctor put me on Mounjaro. So I just in the last 2 years I've lost 75 pounds. And all my, I just had a physical and everything, all my levels, everything's great. But it was really one of the most profound things I've done in my life, really. It was to be able to save someone else's life with something that you really don't need is a blessing. And I don't take it for granted. George doesn't take it for granted. My daughter doesn't take it for granted. George has a foundation that he does a lot of work with, and I work with Lori. And it's just a great thing. And like it says, it is the ultimate recycling. I mean, I always would tell people when I did, I go, well, donate a kidney, you only need one. I mean, who cares? But I think it did do, I think we need to continue to get our stories out there. I know Lori has fought to get the correct stories on TV shows and things like that. And it's just important to get the word out that it's not this mystery. But it's shocking how the numbers have climbed since I gave a kidney 20 years ago. I think when I gave a kidney, there were 79 or something thousand people on the transplant list, and now I think it's, what, 120 something?
About a little under 100.
Oh, 100.
But only about 60,000 are active.
Are active, okay. Yeah, so it's something that is, you know, it's so silent, you know, like with George, he was traveling a lot, he was always tired, but we're all tired. We all have active lives. And it's not something, it was so, we were fortunate that he popped his Achilles tendon. But it's a wonderful thing, and I'm so happy that I was a live kidney donor, and other than the birth of my daughter, it's the best thing I've ever done, so that's it.